fortunate personally and professionally, but I do know this. My biggest lesson is it's not what you accomplish, but how you handle the transitions that matters. And the second lesson would be, and to never be attached to the outcomes, good or bad. So when I was at Minnesota State University Moorhead, finishing my undergraduate degree in exercise science, I didn't really know what I wanted to do. I like sports. I like being in the weight room. But it's almost like the Minnesota Vikings picked me, or the profession picked me. And then I interned with the Minnesota Vikings. I was very fortunate to be around some really smart people. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, but I was around some really smart people at an early age. And then after that was a launching pad to get into the strength conditioning world. And the reason why it happened, to be honest with you, is because I asked one question. I went to a friend of mine who was a strength coach at a high school in Minnesota, and I just said, hey, is there anybody that you know that I should talk to in strength conditioning? And he just happened to know the head strength coach for the Minnesota Vikings at that time. And then it snowballed into other things. And it all started from curiosity in that one question. Yeah, great question. So I was very fortunate to be the head strength conditioning coach at University of Detroit for 4 years. And it was a dream job. I got to work with all the sports teams. It was a very basketball exaggerated environment because that's where a lot of the NBA players came out of Detroit, and they had their Nike Pro-Am league in the off season. So because that was one of my favorite sports, even though I worked with all the sports. And at a very young age, I was literally probably the youngest Division I strength coach in the country at that time. And a lot of the athletes were my age or younger. And it was just a very unique time for me. But one of the biggest lessons I learned, I'll never forget this, the importance of physically engaging people during competition in a positive way. So like high fives, fist bumps, hand claps, jumping up in the air, chest bumps. It didn't even matter what it was. And I'll never forget playing with a bunch of NBA players in a Pro-Am league and not in their off season. And I got to feel what it was like to positively and powerfully and consistently physically engage each other. And on top of that, activate people with your voice, regardless of your personality type. And that really changed the way I look at sports, because I grew up in a small town. It was a 500-person town that I grew up in, and that changed how I competed after that, because I felt the value in verbal leadership and positive physical engagement and leading people in those categories, because I got to feel it. Not because people told me it was important, but I got to feel the value in it. So I'll never forget that, being an early age strength coach, learning those valuable skills, and then living your dream, but also understanding that it could change it in 24 hours. So not being attached to the outcome or the current situation that you're currently in, knowing that it could change any time, just like any industry. And then that took me to another job. After that, I went to Florida for 4 years and worked for the wealthiest individual in Japan. So I got to learn Japanese business culture, and it changed my life. It changed my outlook on money and finances and trust, and how to be sincere in personal environments, whatever. And then after that, so many lessons. And then I went to the University of Tennessee, and I was fortunate to work with the women's programs in the weight room, and so many lessons there. Yeah, great question. I appreciate it. So I get to have very, very unique, not surface-related conversations with a lot of players in all sports, all levels, coaches, all sports, all levels, and then parents also, too, administrators. And everything is not what it seems. Most people who play sports for the wrong reasons. In my opinion, you should compete in sports for 3 reasons. Number 1, to have fun. Number 2, have fun together. Number 2, to compete together. And number 3 is to improve your skills together. And I think we've lost our way on why people participate and play in their sports. So that causes a ridiculous amount of problems after that. Because then you get all the attention for performing well, which that's the reason why a lot of people perform sports, is just to perform well or be the best. And that's all you get attention for. So when you're not your best, it wrecks you. It wrecks you mentally. It wrecks you emotionally. So I think if you get away from those 3 reasons why you actually perform sport, it frees you up. And then you don't have all this pressure on you and all of these unrealistic expectations inside of that. So anyways, that's part of the really, really important things I've learned, those 5 lessons, having those expectations and those realities, why you're actually doing it. The coaches have changed my life because there's a lot of well-intended coaches out there, amazing people, but they're not really well-educated and well-versed in a lot of the necessary skills that's needed to coach right now in 2020. And they're not teaching us at the university level and their coursework for coaches. And it's just like, oh, how do I deal with the emotional intelligence or lack of intelligence with the players I work with or the coaches and staff that I'm with? How do I lead those people? Versus like, okay, I know my X's and O's, but that's like 1% of the way there. How do I create a culture that's contagious, that builds healthy competitors, not just competitors, right? And begins with the end in mind. And there's just all these questions that coaches are never asked, and it's starting to happen more and more and more to help equip them and be more effective and more fulfilled in their jobs. And so there's a lot of things. Thanks for listening. A lot of things in that question. There's a lot of lessons. I do know this. On the other side of the coin, athletes aren't having as close to amount of fun as you can imagine. Not even close. And it's because they're pursuing happiness through their sport. They're not happy before they perform. They're happy if they perform. And that's a really, really major problem. And the solution isn't you got to perform more joyfully out there and you got to have more fun. That's an evaluation. That's not a solution. And that's what a lot of the garbage that's going on right now. And it's not helping athletes at any level or coaches make their jobs easier. So those are some of the big lessons that I've jumped out, and there's so many more. Yeah, phenomenal. So I do know this with 100% clarity. You have to have highly effective habits and strategies, literally, that create your foundation of what you believe in. So inside of that, you got to have core values. You got to identify what you believe are your truths, whether it's how you treat people, whether it's how you perform, compete, train, prepare, all of those things. You have to constantly be researching those, never being satisfied with those things. And you have to create a foundation that's built in with daily habits and strategies that you really believe in, that you really, really believe in, you have conviction in, that you're willing to put out to the world. And most people don't have that. They just kind of show up and they work hard and they try to be a good person. I'm telling you, that's not enough. It's not even close to being enough. So you got to create a foundation inside of those things and then study healthy high performers and model and demonstrate what they've done. A lot of people study performers. Hey, this person's the best in the world at what they do in this sport. This person was the best in the world at what they do. Were they a healthy high performer, or did they trade in all of everything else in their life outside of sport in order to accomplish those outcomes in their sport, and they ended up being really good at it, but they sacrificed everything, and now they're destroyed mentally, physically, emotionally at the later part of their life. And that's why I don't think people focus on enough and prioritize enough. So if you're a coach or you're an athlete right now in 2020, there's some things that you should really make sure you prioritize and be obsessed with. So one would be you want to be the fastest learner in the room. And it only comes from being the most present and being the most curious, right? So that you, for your distractions, don't take notes on a digital leash ever. Take notes on a notepad. Really focus on being present, grounding yourself to the present moment. That'll influence how fast you learn, right? And then being curious, having some really, really serious go-to questions. If you were me, what would you ask? Or, hey, what question haven't I asked so far that I should have? Or, hey, what's the best thing that can happen in your life right now? Or, hey, what have the best performers not done consistently? And so just to have some go-to questions to increase your curiosity, that which will influence your speed of learning, is non-negotiable. If you want to be good at what you do, you have to prioritize that. So make sure you're the fastest learner in the room. Second thing is you have to have a rage to master yourself. Don't care about what other people do, right? Because comparison is the death of joy. Focus on the best version of yourself from the past to being better than the best version of yourself in the future, right? Don't compare yourself to the past. Compare yourself to the best version of yourself in the past and keep pulling yourself down that same path. And by having a rage to master yourself, being obsessed with mastering yourself, studying yourself like a bug, that's when the magic happens. So whether you're an athlete at any level, a player, a coach, doesn't even matter. Those two ingredients usually put you in a really, really good spot if you prioritize those and be obsessed with being a fast learner and having a rage to master yourself. I really believe in doing more with less. I really believe in the Stoic Philosophy. When you're rich, act like you're poor. I believe that influences your appetite and your appreciation in really, really good ways. And that's why I eat a prison burrito. Ends up being usually once every 30 days. And a prison burrito is literally, it's a burrito that if you were in prison, you only have access to certain ingredients in prison at the prison store, different things. And you prepare it as if you were a prisoner, locked up somewhere. And again, the weird reason why I do that is I believe in doing more with less. So for example, the items that you would have access to in prison are the ingredients of a prison burrito. So I go up to the dollar store, I get a meat stick, I get a package of ramen noodles, I get olive ketchup for flavor, sometimes mayo for flavor. And this isn't the healthiest thing in America, but prison inmates don't have access to the healthiest things in America all the time either. So I appreciate doing more with less and not even eating a 5-star meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day. So I think there's a reason why there's value in not being too good for that. Obviously, you don't eat a prison burrito every day if you don't have to, because it's not the healthiest thing. 1,400 calories at the end of the day. But so included also, thanks to your patience, are Doritos and Cheez-Its, because these are all ingredients that you can usually buy at a prison store, right? Or you have access to in prison. And thanks for listening. So then you take a Doritos bag, you crush up the Doritos, and you open the bag a little bit, enough to pour in the crushed up ramen noodles, the crushed up Cheez-Its, and you're using the Doritos bag to cook all these ingredients. You break up your meat stick, you put it all in this bag, and then you have access to hot water in prison, so you fill it up halfway with hot water, fold the bag over, and you let it cook the ramen noodles and all the other ingredients. Literally, it forms up to like a burrito if you fold it over right, and then you flip it over and cook the other side, and the warm water's cooking the noodles and everything else, and you eat it right off the bag. So you break open the bag, and the bag serves as your plate, and there you go.